Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Kieran Marsh, Nathan Drudy back with you for another week. Drew, plenty happening tonight. History for Hannah Green and Joaquin Niemann, a winner on the PGA Tour. And fair to say, a bit's happened on the Saudi Golf League front. So a lot to get through this evening, but always great to have your company, my friend.
Very excited to be here, KM. Lots to talk about, as you mentioned. So let's get stuck into it, shall we?
And we'll get stuck into it by toasting Hannah Green. I don't have a shoe, actually. I'm barefoot at the moment, so I don't have anything to pour it into by way of a receptacle. But we will crack open a Gage Roads beer, thanks to our great friends at Gage Roads Brewing Company, WA's premier craft brewery, named after the strip of ocean between Rottnest and Fremantle. Both of us having a bit of trouble with the lid there. The single fin. I'm going with the pipe dreams this week. So,
Shock.
The lager. Hannah Green, back-to-back wins, of course, off the Vic Open last week, where she claimed the WPGA title at Vic Open, and now the whole kit and caboodle at TPS Murray River, creating history, as I mentioned at the top, the first female to win a mixed professional event anywhere in the world. So, of course, we're not talking about something like the Vic Open or what we saw at Royal Queensland with the Australian PGA and WPGA, where the tournaments are played side by side. We're talking about men and women in the same field. There's a handful of these events around the world. Hannah Green becomes the first woman to win one of the mixed events, and Drewster really did so in convincing fashion. When you look at her Sunday performance comparatively to those she was equal at 15 under with heading into the final day, it was never in doubt.
It wasn't. No, and I think it was those last 18 holes were a bit of a mere formality, KM. Just got the job done. A final round 66, only one player going better than that, and that was Hayden Hopewell, who's an amateur from over here in WA. Had a really good round of 65. So very impressive performance from Hannah. Clearly I dare say, clearly the best golfer in the field. So I think that's probably not understating it. It's probably not really too disrespectful to other players as well. I mean, she's a major champion, takes home 36 grand, and yeah, back to back for Hannah Green. Great to see, KM. Great to see.
I mentioned that the group that she was tied with. So heading into the final day, I mentioned she was a joint 54-hole leader at 15 under alongside Andrew Evans, Matthew Miller, and Blake Collier. So when we compare the final rounds of those four, Hannah Green, as you mentioned, 66, the second lowest score in the field on Sunday. Andrew Evans, a 70. So 4 shots worse off. Matty Miller, incredibly consistent. He went 66, 66, 66. And then when it counted, a 72 on Sunday. And then Blake Collier went a 75 on Sunday. So Hannah Green is almost 9 shots better, or is 9 shots better, than Blake Collier there. But as I said, there were 4 people in contention at the 54-hole lead, only one with seemingly complete control of her golf ball at the pointy end of the tournament.
Well, I think, yeah, that's a good way to put it, in control. I was obviously caught a bit of this on Sunday, and Matty Miller, normally such a reliably consistent ball striker, just very much not in control of his ball on Sunday. Probably through about 6 holes. I think you and Porter even mentioned it on the broadcast that he hasn't seen him strike the ball this badly for quite some time, and he was managing to scrape through from his putting, which is unbelievably consistent. But yeah, it was his ball striking that let Matt Miller down, and yeah, maybe the occasion a little too big for guys like Evans and Collier. But yeah, Hannah Green just, I think, now going back to back, 2 wins under her belt, sets her up really nicely for 2022. I mean, obviously this is, I think when you look at this week and last week's event, clearly not on the same scale as last week, but no less important, I would suggest, in her preparation for what is shaping up to be a big 2022 season on the LPGA Tour.
Most certainly, Drews. And we spoke last week about both for Hannah and I suppose on the PGA side, Minwoo Lee, coming home with that level of expectation around you. Hannah's summer certainly less busy than what she'd originally planned with the challenges of coming over from Western Australia. But, 2 events entered, 2 wins. Difficult to assess it as anything other than a raging success, her return home. And I flagged it last week with the manner in which she's not only weathered or handled the expectation, but in my estimation, embraced it. I think she certainly enjoyed the responsibility of coming home as the highest, behind Minjee Lee, of course, the second highest ranked female Australian in the world, and has walked out there at the humble little Cobram Barooga course, which we'll get to in a moment, and has taken all before her. So I think, to your point, you temper your expectations because, not only is it the courses here not necessarily at the LPGA standard, but also the names in the field. I mean, you only have to look back at recent weeks in the LPGA and you've got Corders, Kangs, Tavatanikets, Parks, Hatuokas, and then most recently, Leona Maguire, whose star continues to rise, becomes the first Irish woman to win on the LPGA Tour. So what she'll go back to compete against in a couple of weeks' time is no mean feat. But to your point, the confidence she will gain, 2 wins under the belt in mid-February already, I think will set her on a great path.
We always say you can only beat who's in front of you. And that's what she went and did 2 weeks in a row. So really great to see. And I hope it does translate over to the LPGA Tour because it's a completely different ball game. As you mentioned, you rattled off 10 names there, and that's just scratching the surface of the LPGA Tour.
I missed plenty.
You missed plenty, yeah, week in, week out. So hopefully, a lot of that confidence does continue over for Hannah when she heads back to the States.
I think just finally for me on Hannah Green, probably two points. I saw a tweet from Tony Wiebeck, good friend of the show, one of the senior writers for the PGA of Australia on their channels, and a fantastic golf head is Weebs. He tweeted earlier today that he's been covering professional golf for close to 20 years, and there's few things in his estimation he's seen as more significant from an Australian golf perspective than Hannah Green's victory yesterday in terms of the history that it's made. He listed, obviously, Scotty's Masters win as one of the things, but a short list of things that beat it, which I thought was significant. And then to see the flow-on effect. So it led the 6 p.m. sports news on Channel 9 in Melbourne last night. In Melbourne, golf led the news. She appeared on the project I saw this evening. So just the effect of what that win means, not only on a global scale, and it's received global headlines being the first female to win a mixed professional event, but also here in Australia, that it creates some headlines and gets golf into the mainstream, I think is such an awesome thing. And then on the flip side, not on the flip side, but to complement that, just watching the broadcast yesterday and the manner in which that rural regional community of Cobram Barooga has embraced the tournament across the 4 days, but the opportunity to see one of the world's best who just happens to be an Aussie. I had to have a giggle. She played in the second last group yesterday. So there was a group behind her and she teed off the first and a massive gallery walked behind her. So the last group of Andrew Evans, Maddie Miller, and young Sheridan Clancy from Lake Carrinup over in WA, who won the junior event, they had to wait, in fact, until she played her second shot so the gallery walking behind her could clear for them to play, which I would go as far as to suggest doesn't happen too often around the world where the final group is made to wait for the second final. So you see at a macro level, the ripple effects of her being here and her winning from a golf in the media perspective, but then at the micro level at the tournament, just how influential and what her presence means to golf fans here in Australia.
Yeah, 100%. I think you've nailed that very well. She's immensely popular too, I think, among her peers, which was another thing I think just picking up through the broadcast yesterday. And I was going to raise how well supported the event was out there in regional Australia, where we know golf is so popular and oftentimes not necessarily the lifeblood, but certainly the center of these towns. So awesome to see and great to see a little bit of external media who's not us and golf fandom getting involved as well. So that's nice to see.
Quick nod to Cobram Barooga. It was great that the broadcast, I thought, did a wonderful job at not just profiling the course itself, which, I thought was excellent and proved a stern test. As you can see, I mentioned one of the co 54-hole leaders is at a 4-over on a Sunday. So wasn't a walk in the park, was Cobram Barooga, but I thought the broadcast did a fantastic job of profiling the people and the personality behind the course and just how much work has gone into that place in order to bring a tournament like TPS Murray River to its home. And I suppose the lateral thinking of what they need to do. I mean, they've just recently installed, courtesy of some local government support, an 18-hole putt-putt course out there because they recognise that they need to attract different audiences into the golf course. So massive pat on the back to the people at Cobram Barooga. And to be fair, Druids, I think a pat on the back to the PGA for taking this tournament out to the regions. We've never been shy at giving them brickbats, but we need to give them some compliments as well, and they deserve it. And the forethought to take this tournament out to the regions and go and put world-class golf on in front of a regional golfing community certainly deserves a lot of props.
100%. Yeah, I thought it was a wonderful tournament, obviously. A lot of yellow for Jared Lyle as well on day 3 and across the tournament, just in general. But yeah, the PGA have been great the last couple of weeks. I think, the broadcast, just bringing it back to your point before, the broadcast has been fantastic. I was really, I was reserving my judgment to see how the broadcast would be after the Aussie PGA and after the Vic Open, obviously receiving an elevated level of coverage. What these events were going to be like, I guess probably the lesser events on the schedule, if you like, but they've done a fantastic job. They've really, really done a great job. And the likes of Nico Hearn and Ewan Porter have been fantastic in just, I think more broadly, just a good way to broadcast golf. I think watching the PGA Tour over the weekend, I found myself so many times just going like, I can see what's happening in front of me on the TV. You don't need to relay that through voice. Whereas Nico Hearn and Port's out on the course, just telling you things that you can't see. So I thought they were fantastic. So massive props to the PGA and the broadcasts that they've worked with Fox and KO to get that off. So really looking forward to the rest of it.
And to Paul Gowie, who's been a previous guest on this podcast, and Stacey Peters as well, who do an excellent job of kind of anchoring that coverage, which is not the easiest job in the world to give people like Nick Ahern and Ewan Porter the space to provide that kind of colour. So
absolutely,
props to the whole team. Drew, probably just to whip through the actual leaderboard. Hayden Hopewell, wow. 65, the low round of the day on Sunday, the amateur from Western Australia. Unbelievable striking of the ball, and he would, I'm sure, be pleased with that in the lead up to the Australian amateur coming up in a few weeks' time as well. So a great showing from the West Aussie amateur. In terms of some other friends of this podcast, Grace Kim finished in a tie for 4th, which is excellent to see her bounce back from a disappointing DQ the week before in the Vic Open. So she bounced back in the best possible way, finishing 5 shots back from the winner. A couple of other names I quickly want to mention before I hand it over to yourself. Cassie Porter continues to impress. I think just her 4th start as a professional, the young Queenslander from the Sunshine Coast. She finished in a tie for 6th at 14 under. Anthony Quayle, a 67-68 for his weekend. Jetted him up to T11, and he's kind of be really interesting to see what he does now, because he's kind of starting to firm up a spot in the top end of that order of merit. And obviously has the option to go and play in Japan on the Asian tour and the Japanese tour, which he's made his own in the recent couple of years. So it'll be fascinating to see what he does in these next 5 or 6 events, whether he stays around and really locks in on shoring up his European tour card or decides to head to Japan. Just finally on Anthony Quayle as well, before I let you wax lyrical on a few of your favourites. I don't know if you saw this on the coverage or on Anthony Quayle's Instagram. But he had a change of caddy over the weekend. So went into the tournament with I would assume probably a local, given that he changed it so easily and quickly. But Jediah Morgan was on his back on Saturday and Sunday. So I had a bit of a double take and saw it, and then jumped onto the leaderboard here, and Jed retired after one round. So to be fair, I haven't reached out to kind of confirm what's happened there. I assume some sort of injury has forced him to kind of pull the pin, but not one that would prevent him from carrying the bag, because he's on the back for Anthony Quayle, at least in the final round, and I'd assume probably on Saturday as well. So shout out to Jed. Not that I'm surprised at all through the conversations we've had with him, but certainly not a big enough head. The leader of the Order of Merit on the bag for Anthony Quayle across the weekend at Cobram Barooga.
Yeah, very handy indeed. No, I didn't have any others to mention. I was just going to make mention of Anthony Quayle in the in third place at the moment on that Order of Merit. Puts a little gap on Dimmy, about $3,000 worth, who's about $4,000 ahead of Louis Dobler, and then a fair step back to Brad Kennedy. So that battle between Anthony Quayle and Dimmy Papadakis is really the one to keep an eye on at the moment, because we know Louis is obviously going to head back overseas. So yeah, it'll be a fascinating watch just to see who's going to shore up that final spot for the European Tour card.
There are 6 events remaining. So the tournament has a little break now, picks up again in Sydney, TPS Sydney at Bonnie Doon, 3rd to 6th March, immediately followed by TPS Hunter Valley before we head to the New South Wales Open. And then we have the events over in your neck of the woods, the WA PGA Championship in Kalgoorlie, the WA Open at Royal Fremantle, and the NT PGA Championship up in Palmerston to round us out. So not too many events left to really make a charge to the top of that Order of Merit, as you said, and it's looking pretty safe for Jed Morgan, Andrew Dote, and then Anthony Quayle firming up a spot in 3rd. Very briefly, Drews, before we round out, I mentioned a name before, but Sheridan Clancy was the winner of the junior event from the Lake Carrinup Golf Course in Western Australia, Perth to be in fact.
Must be nice.
And she must be very nice, Sheridan. She minces the ball.
Yeah.
Like, she was uber impressive. I think 16 or 17 years of age. Incredibly impressive. Played Saturday alongside what I imagine to be one of, if not her actual hero, in Hannah Green, and didn't seem phased in the slightest, which I think is very promising for her future, that she took that in her stride and managed to play pretty well enough to take out the junior tournament. So well done to young Sheridan Clancy from WA. She
played with Maddie Miller on Sunday, I think, and was out driving him, which was very interesting to watch. Last one, my sure shot of the week. I know we haven't done this for a couple of weeks, but shot of the week. I reckon it's yours as well. Whitney Hillier's ace.
Yes, Whipper.
Shout out Whipper. So that's where I'm just leaving that one.
It's an ace in competition.
Yes.
Does Whipper. So congratulations. Another ace for her. It was on the 9th on Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, because I texted you. I remember as soon as it happened, I was very excited. The 9th hole on Sunday, an ace for Whitney Hillier. I agree. My shot of the week, thanks to our great friends at Sure Shot. Make sure you jump online and take a look at their rangefinders. Helped me a great deal out at Brookwater on Friday, which we'll get to a little later on. Truth, jumping over to the PGA Tour. One of our boys, and I say our boys for a variety of reasons, because A, he's obviously hashtag Team International on the President's Cup, and B, he was one of the first graduating classes for us. He was a winner on the very early doors of the 19th Tee podcast. I think it was a military tribute at the Greenbrier way back at the end of 2019 when we butchered his name. I can't remember. I think we were saying Yaquin at the time.
Yaku.
That's amongst those first 40 episodes we tell nobody to listen to because they're horrific. Well, fast forward, and he has his second win on the PGA Tour in his 101st start. I speak, of course, of Joaquin Niemann, who has gone wire to wire at the Genesis at the Riviera Country Club, my favourite course on the tour. An incredibly impressive win. Teresa finishes at 19 under. Funnily enough, he was at 16 under through 2 rounds where he broke the 36-hole scoring record for the Riv. Only managed to shoot 3 more birdies across that, or, gain another 3 shots across that time. So he certainly shot out the gates fast and held off a fast finishing Colin Morikawa this afternoon, but incredibly impressive. He's the 3rd youngest ever to go wire to wire on the PGA Tour, behind Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy, and the youngest winner of this tournament in 96 years. So, a phenomenal effort from Joaquin Niemann.
Yeah, it was. I think that his score of 16 under at the cut line, then into the last 2 rounds, showcases how difficult this course gets over the final 36 holes, which is Something that I very much enjoy. Can you imagine two more polar opposite of tournaments to win? To start your career with the Greenbrier and then take the step up to Riv and win the Genesis. Yeah. I thought that was great, but no, really impressive. All jokes aside, an eagle today on 11, and a birdie on 8, a couple of bogeys in there, but all in all, just a really, really impressive performance from a guy who is so talented, and he's certainly, we don't mention him in the conversation of Colin Morikawa and Victor Hovland. And I don't know why that is sometimes, but he certainly deserves to be mentioned among those next generation of genuine stars, because that's what he's going to be. He's going to be a real crux of the international team at the President's Cup, which you alluded to. His ball striking is fantastic. He's a really charismatic dude as well. And I think that's all ticking plenty of boxes for me for big Jaco. I'm sticking with Jaco. Yeah,
Neiman. I'm confident with Joaquin at this point in time, but I don't mind Jaco. He was elite. I mean, what got him home was his putting. I think he was 154th on the season strokes game putting coming into this week, and finishes top 3 with the flat stick here at Riv. No mean feat given the green complexes there. It's such a storied course, but he was phenomenal. To go wire to wire on the PGA Tour and to start 63 out the gate is uber impressive. So look, it's going to be an uphill battle for the international team at the President's Cup later this year. Remind me again where it is.
The President's Cup?
Yeah.
Jeez, you've even stumped me.
Shadow Creek, no. Something that they're going to set up with huge amounts of length. Let me pass. Sorry,
I'm reading Data Golf at the moment.
Yeah, right.
But there's interesting stats in there. Just looking at strokes game putting across the course of the week. Mav McNeely was the leader in that field, gaining 2 shots on the field. But where I guess Neiman did all the damage was tee to green. He was gaining 3.5 strokes on the field, only gaining half a stroke on the putting surface. So really, really fascinating when you break it down and look at Data Golf, how that's playing out.
Quail Hollow is where the tournament is for the President's Cup. Length will be a premium, and Neiman hits the cover off the ball. So he's going to be an absolute linchpin of that international team. Very cool, I thought, to see. So waiting for him on the 18th green as he walked up and completed his second PGA Tour victory was, and I'll make sure I get all of them, Mito Pereira, his countryman, and the only other Chilean on the tour. And alongside Mito was Carlos Ortiz, Sergio Garcia, Jonathan Vegas, and there was one more player. It's going to bother me now, but all the Spanish speakers who I believe, having read a story, tend to rent an Airbnb together in the tournament weeks, and really cool, I thought, to see that they all kind of stayed back and congratulated him on his how could I forget El Jefe? Sebastian Munoz was the other player in that group, our friend El Jefe.
Great story.
So, yeah, fantastic to see them stay back. In terms of some other things to stick out, Scotty's form continues to impress. Finished in a tie for 4th, 5 shots back at 14 under. So, I mean, you want to talk about things you look for Scotty. You always look for Riv where he performs well. Watch out for him now, probably in the next couple of weeks, because you've got the Arnold Palmer and you've got the Players coming up. And of course, if that trajectory continues, then all roads lead to Augusta National in April, where he is a previous winner. So he's definitely trending in the right direction. Victor Hovland continued his outstanding form, also at 14 under in a tie for 4th. Justin Thomas, 1 shot back, and JT, gee whiz, I tell you, if he can just sort the putter. Putter is what's letting him down at the moment, because everything else looks immaculate. And then from an Australian perspective, I mentioned Scotty, Matty Jones, the next best Australian at tie for 15th at 8 under. Mark Leishman also finished at 8 under. And you head down the list, you've got Cameron Smith at 5 under in a tie for 33rd, and Cam Davis in a tie for 48 at 3 under in terms of the Aussies in the field. But
Minwoo missed the cut.
Minwoo, of course, I didn't scroll down that far. Apologies to Minwoo, who's had a tough start to his appearances back in the States. I think that's 2 from 2 in terms of missed cuts for Minwoo, but I'm sure we're trending in the right direction as he looks to continue his run, get a bit more status over in the States. So that's the Genesis, or what was known as the LA Open Tigers tournament. He is, of course, the host of that, and he had a few things to say on the broadcast, which will be promising for golf fans in terms of his future in 2022. We'll get to that a little later on as well, but that wraps us up, Drewster, on the PGA Tour this week. All right, Drewster, before we cover off on some significant moves on the Saudi Golf League front, a little message from our friends at Cobra Puma Golf. Let's be clear, completely unrelated. Let's be very clear. Completely unrelated, those two topics, but provides a nice little break from our results into our news. And of course, the big news out of Cobra Puma is the launch of the King LTDX irons. We spoke to you a few weeks ago about the new LTDX range. It's drivers, fairway woods, and irons. Already talked you through kind of the driver fairway woods section, and now we're into the irons designed to deliver next level distance and forgiveness for golfers seeking game improvement. The irons have been re-engineered from the inside out using an intelligent power core weighting design that strategically positions the center of gravity and adds face and body flexion to deliver maximum ball speeds. So a couple of different options here. You've got the LTDX irons, available in both variable and one length, if you're more of the Bryson DeChambeau model. But these are a step up again from what we've seen in recent years from the Rad Speed models most recently, and then the Speed Zone models before them. I've spoken to our man 40, who is reporting gains of 10 to 15 meters with his new LTDX clubs. So that's
significant.
It certainly is, my friend, because as I said to him, I'll take 5 if I can find it. So 10 to 15 is phenomenal. The technology that's gone into these, both the drivers, the woods, and now the irons, I think is at the cutting edge, and proving once again that Cobra are right at the forefront of the innovation in the tech and equipment game. So I'm heading down in about 2 weeks for my little test drive of these, Drewster, and I'm very excited about that. Raw Queensland of all places, which would be very nice.
Must be nice.
Must be very nice. But the LTDX range looks the absolute business. So the variable or one length LTDX King irons, and they are available online and retail late February is the official word. I think you'll find it may be sometime this week. So keep your eyes peeled, cobragolf.com.au. Drewster.
Yeah.
Bit going on.
A little bit.
I think would be the way to describe developments on the SGL or Saudi Golf League front. Now, we've consciously not touched this for a number of weeks while things have been bubbling away in the background, but it's come to a head in the last 24 hours. I suppose what you'd describe as Sunday at Riviera, because we're recording this on Monday night, but depending on when you're listening to this, it was Sunday at Riviera where news kind of started breaking about, I suppose, some leaks in the SGL ship. So I think to provide some context, if you've been living under a rock from a golf perspective in the last couple of weeks, obviously, a couple of months ago, Greg Norman kind of came out, and his Live Golf Investments is the face of the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia and their money that they're putting into golf, primarily through the Asian Tour. But then there were rumours in the background of the SGL, which was going to be, I think, a 10 tournament event or tour, comprising golf courses predominantly in America, but also a couple in Asia, one up in Canada, events all around the world. This is what Phil was posturing to move to. He's been making a variety of different statements in recent weeks about the dictatorship type control of the PGA Tour, how essentially claiming restraint of trade through, I suppose, obtrusive media rights being held by the PGA, and the fact that players can't get their own, footage to sell themselves. He's talked about tens of millions of dollars worth of NFTs that the PGA Tour is holding on to. Never seen any of these.
Billions. $20 billion in digital rights.
$20 billion in digital rights that the PGA Tour, again, is withholding from its members. So Phil doing everything that he possibly can to paint the picture that he's been left with no option other than to get into bed with the murderous regime of Mohammed bin Salam and his friends over in Saudi Arabia. He hadn't mentioned names, but there were rumours players like Bryson DeChambeau was well in advance. At one stage, heavily reported that Bryson was considering, I think it was $130 million offer to join the Saudi Golf League. Dustin Johnson had also been linked. Players like Lee Westwood had publicly said he'd signed a non-disclosure agreement. There were rumours that Adam Scott was down the path, as was Joaquin Neiman, the most recent winner on the PGA Tour. Charlie Hoffman, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but apparently a player of some note. He's won about $40 million in his career courtesy of the PGA Tour. Blew up deluxe because of the penalty for a rules infringement at the Waste Management in Phoenix, and that seemed to be enough that he was going to jump ship. He essentially said so. This is the reason why players are considering other tours, because we get no protection. It's been a busy couple of weeks. But as I said, purposely, Droots, we've been not trying to get bogged down in that shit, because we've made our thoughts very clear on Saudi Arabia, and we've made our thoughts very clear on the potential move of players towards a rebel tour backed by, as I flagged, a murderous regime. Seems as though plans maybe, I'm not going to suggest it's over, because money always wins and they've got a lot of it, but a significant body blow for the SGL in the past 24 hours.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot here. I mean, yeah, we could go for hours on all of this. I mean, in the last, I guess, 24 hours, sort of what you're alluding to here, Rory McIlroy's declared it dead in the water. So we're talking about a $2.9 billion rival golf league, which is the Saudi Golf League. Bryson DeChambeau, you're correct, was offered $135 million, which is more than Tiger Woods has earned in his entire life on the PGA Tour. So some names were linked, as you mentioned, KM. John Rahm was very out and out, saying that he was fully committed to the PGA Tour, as was Colin Morikawa, as was Rory McIlroy. The point there is that a number of the top golfers in the world, in which this league needed to have on board, publicly said that they weren't interested in coming across. So it took a body blow early days when it couldn't attract the likes of those players. I think they then they said, we need to land a big fish. We need to land the biggest fish in physical size. So they went after Bryson, who has previously supported the Saudi events. Dustin Johnson has previously supported the Saudi events, to your point before, as is Adam Scott. Jason Kokrak is sponsored by the fucking Saudi government. Charlie Hoffman. Phil was obviously really the puppeteer pulling the strings, or I don't know, maybe he was the puppet having his strings pulled. That took a turn in the last 24 hours, Marshy, with I guess Rory firstly sort of declaring it dead and buried. Earlier, Bryson DeChambeau put out a statement on his Twitter, which I'll read in a moment, because there's a couple of thoughts on that. Dustin Johnson said that he's fully committed to the PGA Tour. But I think it's important to note, did so via the PGA Tour. So Bryson DeChambeau put out his own statement. Dustin Johnson's statement was issued through the PGA Tour. So to draw a very neat line underneath the fact that I ain't going nowhere. Yeah. If I can just read Bryson's statement.
Please do, because it's a phenomenal example of releasing a statement without actually saying anything.
And that's why I want to raise it, because you and I both work in comms, and we've both crafted a couple of these in our time, right? So this is Bryson's statement. No caption, just the image. While there's been a lot of speculation surrounding my support for another tour, I want to make it very clear that as long as the best players, this is the important part, that as long as the best players in the world are playing the PGA Tour, so will I. As of now, I am focused on getting myself healthy and competing again soon. I appreciate all the support, end quote. That middle part, I want to make it very clear that as long as the best players in the world are playing the PGA Tour, so will I. He's left it very, very open-ended for him to jump ship when this when this eventually rears its head again. DJ, probably a little more cut and dry, I would suggest. But
DJ ain't going.
Bryson has left the door open for him. I don't know if you want to kind of break it down by player or how you want to think, but just how do you want to kind of attack this? Because I think Bryson is a really key focal point in this. I mean, 135 million US, so about 200 mil Australian dollars, 200 Australian dollars is a lot of money. That is
astronomical.
That is more than life-changing money. And I know we can all sit there and say it's blood money. The money comes from a shit place. When that offer is put in front of you, and if that offer was put in front of me, and I'm sure it would be the same for you, you'd have to think about it. Like $200 million is a lot of money.
Certainly.
What do you take on that? Is it? I think you can't just say nah, no way. There'd be a moment where you'd entertain the thought, right? Surely.
Oh, you'd have to. I think you'd mull it for a moment or two. You'd have to think that it's difficult to say no to, given it's life-changing money. But I don't know. I think where I keep coming back to is it's for someone like him, how much more money do you need?
I agree.
And that's it's life-changing money for someone who might be plowing away on the Corn Ferry Tour at the moment, trying to earn their status and get elevated to the PGA Tour. But for one of the richest guys on the tour, not only through earnings, but through endorsements, how much more money do you need? And that's what I keep coming back to. I think there's one piece of the puzzle that we missed, and that's what changed. So all of those things that we said happened. Phil outwardly criticised the tour, made claims around media rights being withheld, called the PGA Tour a dictatorship. He made all these rumblings, as I said, to paint the picture as if he was being left no other option but to go to the Saudi Golf League. All these players publicly came out and said, I've signed a non-disclosure agreement, I can't talk. So this was on, it was absolutely on. The rumours in the background were that the SGL was waiting until they had 20 players before they announced, because they wanted to go in, not drip feed it, they wanted to go in and say, these are the names that are committed. And the intention was, in one of the all-time great middle fingers to the PGA Tour, was to announce the week of the players, being the PGA Tour's major. So we were, that's 3 weeks away, 4 weeks away. That's what we were staring at in terms of the timeline. So what changed? What has happened in the last 2 to 3 days to not only have people like the number one player in the world and John Rahm come out and reaffirm his commitment to the PGA Tour, but to have players like Bryson, like DJ, who had been linked to this move, what made them change? And I think this piece, this may be seen as one of the all-time great humanitarian moves by a golf journalist in terms of one swift piece of writing to shut this whole thing down. Alan Shipnuck is a 25 year veteran of golf journalism, and he has done what previous nations and governments haven't been able to do, and that's fell the Saudis in one foul swoop. This was an amazing piece of writing, Dreads, and I don't know if you caught this. So Shipnuck has a book coming out later this year. It's a biography of Phil, as it happens. And in preparing the final parts of it late last year, obviously that's when the rumours had started about Phil being the number one target for the SGL, and he would be a draw card for others to come. So Shipnuck makes a phone call, does an interview with Phil about what this means. Is it on? Are you doing it? What do you think it means for golf? Because I want to include it in the book. Now, Shipnuck's been sitting on this since November. We are mid-February, 4 months he's been sitting on this interview with the intention of putting it in the book. And he drops a story online on Friday or Saturday, I think it was Friday American time, Saturday our time, which has blown this entire thing apart. And it's quotes from Phil from this phone conversation in November. So let me just read a little bit to you. And this is what is being primarily attributed as the reason why, in their droves, players who had been linked are walking away, because Phil has gone on the record and said this. He didn't pretend to be excited about hitching his fortunes to Saudi Arabia, admitting the SGL was nothing more than what he called sports washing by a brutally repressive regime. This is a quote. "They're scary motherfuckers to get involved with," he said. "We know they killed Jamal Khashoggi, who was the former Washington Post journalist, and have a horrible record on human rights. They execute people over there for being gay. Knowing all of this, why would I even consider it? Because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape how the PGA Tour operates. They've been able to get by with manipulative, coercive, strong-arm tactics because we, the players, had no recourse. As nice a guy as Jay Monahan comes across as," that's the PGA Tour commissioner, "unless you have leverage, he won't do what's right. And the Saudi money has finally given us that leverage. I'm not sure I even want the SGL to succeed, but just the idea of it is allowing us to get things done with the PGA Tour." Let me just repeat a few of those things. They're scary motherfuckers to get involved with. We know they killed Jamal Khashoggi. They execute people over there for being gay. They have a horrible record on human rights. The PGA Tour have been able to get by with manipulative, coercive, and strong-arm tactics because we have no recourse. I'm not even sure that I want them to succeed, they being the SGL, but we finally have leverage. These were the quotes out of the guy who was meant to be the central piece of the puzzle. And Alan Shipnuck dropped a bomb on, and I should rephrase, shouldn't use the B word in relation to Saudi Arabia. Alan Shipnuck dropped his mic, Drewster, in the middle of this and has single-handedly, I think, delivered, not necessarily, I'm not saying the referees started the count, but the Saudis are on the canvas. It was a significant body blow because as soon as Phil's on the record, admitting all of the things that we already have all said about the Saudis, and then going as far to say, I'm not even sure I want it to succeed. It's just giving me the leverage against the tour that I need. Everyone has walked away from Phil.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I think I was thinking about this comparison the other day that I'm about to make. I'm doing it very carefully. Dennis Rodman went to North Korea. A lot of
good mates with Kim Jong.
Very good mates. Wasn't over there for leverage of a basketball league, but there's similarities between with what him and Phil are trying to do. Like it was one that popped into my head. I don't know if that's fair or if you need time to think on that one, but look, Phil for me was a guy that I grew up watching golf, and it was Tiger and Phil, the duo. That was it. It was head to head, Tiger and Phil. Obviously, Phil being not as successful as what Tiger's gone on to achieve, but still one of the greatest of all time that will ever play the game. There's no denying that. I think he has single-handedly ruined his reputation in the past 2 weeks. To tie yourself to a regime that does all of those things that he just admits to it's just suicide for your reputation. And I think that once the sheep at the front being Phil and the sheep behind being Bryson and DJ and Scotty and who else am I missing here? Lee Westwood and Poulter and Kokrak. Once this sheep walked into the abattoir, the rest of them just followed, right? And he has killed his reputation in the past 2 weeks. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who have lost so much respect, even more so now in the past 48 hours since that article came out, where it's all well and good for him to sit there and kind of beat around the bush and come up with some highly political answers to any of those questions. But for him to go on the record and say everything that we've said and just commit social suicide is just unbelievable to me. Yes. And I think there's so many different issues that we can tackle here, and we're not going to do them all tonight. But from a reputation management perspective, Phil's in fucking crisis right now. Like seriously.
There'd be some PR professionals then in their Keith, I would have thought at the moment.
But I don't know how you come back from it.
Well, you don't. So there's a passage here that I read today. You've heard me mention a number of times Eamon Lynch, who is one of my favourite golf writers, purely because he's not just a numbers man. He's not a results man. He puts a bit of colour, a bit of flavour in his writing, and he's been around long enough that he truly doesn't give a fuck what people think about what he writes, which are the best writers because they tell it how it is. There was a passage in his article that he wrote about this, which I thought was phenomenal. It reads, an old adage, often wrongly attributed to Sun Tzu's The Art of War, holds that if you wait by the riverbank long enough, the bodies of your enemies will eventually float by. That's as good a metaphor as any for how some golf industry executives must have felt in the wake of recent comments by Phil Mickelson that incinerated his reputation, alienated most every constituency in the game, exposed him to disciplinary action, and otherwise cast him in a light so unflattering that even Greg Norman might hesitate to be seen in his company. And I thought it was brilliant because for me, there's so many things here. But ultimately, we are 12 months removed from a guy that at 51 years of age, in what at the time I described as, and still believe, that the single greatest golfing achievement I've witnessed in my time watching the game, won the PGA Championship. And in that short space of time, he has, to Eamon's words, incinerated his reputation. There's no other way to look at it. There is no way that he wins here because in many respects, he has to hold firm because he's tied himself to this. If he walks away, or if he tries to now come out with, hey guys, I was just working it from the inside to try and pull it down, this is my plan all along, I'll probably have less respect for him, to be honest, than if he sticks his heels in and digs in. But there's no way that he wins here. And it's such a shame because, to your point, that's a guy that outside of Tiger you grow up idolizing, and constantly you refute the claims of people from inside the industry who say he's not all that he seems, and the smiling Phil that you get on the camera is a facade, and it's not what you get behind closed doors, and you discount that because it's still someone that you looked up to. But maybe just maybe he's finally showing us what he's always been. Right. And there's an old saying that when someone tries to show you who they are, believe them. And it's just such a shame because there is no way back for him now. I think, what's been overlooked in that article is an admission from Phil that he and unnamed players, but they are the players that we've spoken about, who he was deep in conversations about this move, engaged lawyers to write up a competition charter for the SGL. Now, that is most likely in direct breach of their contract with PGA Tour. So the tour is probably well within its rights to tell Phil he's never allowed to play again at a tour event. Whether or not they have the backbone to do that's another story, but he's literally blown himself up. And that's like, it's so sad. But then to see Rory was phenomenally strong. I don't want to kick someone while he's down, obviously, but I thought they were naive, selfish, egotistical, and ignorant comments. A lot of words to describe that interaction he had with Shipnuck. It was just very surprising and disappointing. Sad, really. I'm sure he's sitting at home, sort of rethinking his position and where he goes from here. Rory didn't pull his punches, and nor should he. Because Phil, in my mind, doesn't have a place in the game anymore.
Yeah, I think he's going to struggle to have a place in the game because the PGA Tour is absolutely within its rights to say, you've made your bed now, like go, off you go. But also, like, any time that if he does come back and play on the tour, any time that there's some sort of media presence, it's just going to be dominated by this. Correct. Like I haven't seen anything from Phil in the last 48 hours at time of recording. I don't think he's put a statement out.
Hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah. That is going to be fascinating. I think that's probably going to be the real tell point. What's missed in all of this was the line about leverage in there. I don't know if you've still got the article there that you could maybe, if you don't, that's all right. But essentially he mentioned, the only reason that I've got involved in this is leverage with the PGA Tour. And I'm not necessarily opposed to the thought of leverage. I think, have you got it there?
Yeah, so he says, as nice a guy as Jay Monahan, that's the PGA Tour commissioner, comes across as, unless you have leverage, he won't do what's right. And the Saudi money has finally given us that leverage. I'm not even sure I want the SGL to succeed, but just the idea of it is allowing us to get things done with the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you could also substitute the word leverage for blackmail in the first part of that sentence. Yeah. But I think there are elements to that comment around having leverage to better the playing conditions and better the financial freedoms, for lack of a term, then there's merit to what he's saying in that sense, to get the PGA Tour to move forward. I mean, look at the PIP, right? Was a fantastic. It was in direct response.
Phil won, ironically.
Yeah.
That will be the last $8 million donation he ever receives from the PGA Tour.
You can't imagine, like, show me the votes, Jay. Show me the numbers, because I don't even reckon Phil would have cracked the top 20 of those. But I think his point around leverage does make a lot of sense in that it is very hard to get things done when you have a monopoly in town, right?
100%.
So the alternative for Phil at 51, now having an understanding of what he's brought to the game, and he's well within his rights to say, I have generated all of this content and I've bought in media rights and I've done, you've been around it long enough, Marshy, in sport. The athletes are the ones who make the game go round, right? Without the athletes, it doesn't exist. And golfers, when you look at what Tiger has brought into the game and what he's actually earned from the PGA Tour, it's not comparable to an NBA player. You look at LeBron, right? I would put LeBron and Tiger on very similar levels. LeBron's earned probably 10 to 15 times as much as what Tiger has. So I understand
from his actual play, yes.
From his salary, yeah. So I understand what Phil's saying around leverage, because the PGA Tour is sitting there going, well, if you don't like it, fuck off. Go play somewhere else. And what's Phil's options? He can go play. We probably can't go play on the DP World Tour because they've got a strategic alliance. We could see Phil playing on the Aussie Tour down here. My point is, I understand the leverage component to what he's talking about. I just still come back to point one, that it's with the Saudis. That's my issue. The PGL, on the other hand, want to be very clear, I am very here for the PGL.
It's interesting, right? So
I don't know if that all makes sense. That was a lot of fucking rambling from me, but
I keep coming back to, so I understand what you're saying, but I think it's a redundant argument from Phil, because the PGA is not the NBA or the NFL. It doesn't have the same market. So Phil thinking there's some sort of ceiling or cap placed on his earning ability by the governing body, I think is pretty absurd, because you look at how much they look after the players. It's insane, right? Like, I actually think, 100%, right? So maybe they don't earn as much week to week, but I would suggest, in terms of from a governing body perspective, they look after the players far more than the NBA does, or absolutely more than the. So, they're not in the same ballpark because there's not the same audience. And so I keep coming back to, how much money do you need, right? We're talking, you look at the purses in the next couple of weeks. I think there's an ability to earn upwards of, $20, $25 million in purses alone in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We haven't even hit the majors. Between the players and the Arnold Palmer and the Honda in between, it's an absurd amount of money on offer. You've got the PIP that's been introduced, which is an extra 8 million. You've got the purses going up in the WGCs. You've got the pension. Phil could have gone on and won at a nauseating rate on the Champions Tour and earned money. Yes, the purses aren't large, but you play enough like Bernard Langer does and you win enough. Don't worry about it. I'm sure he would have earned a couple of million by sitting in the CBS commentary box every year. He's just thrown that all away. He's literally thrown it all away. And he has no other option now but to go with the Saudi money. And like, is it worth it? Because you've burnt every bridge you had in golf for a bit of fucking cash.
Yeah.
Like, is it worth it? Because I can tell you right now, you're going to be playing alongside, at best, Charlie Hoffman and Jason Kokrak, because no one else is coming, brother. You get a couple of top-up players off the Asian tour, and this thing might die in a couple of years because you have absolutely shat the bed. And to think like a guy that is such a good media performer that's been in the game for 25 years spoke to a journalist who was writing a book about him and didn't think this might come out. And that just says to me he didn't give a fuck if it did, because he thought by now this would have been a done deal. He thought we would have signed the contracts, it would have been done. I don't give a shit what people think about me because I'm getting paid. And it hasn't worked out that way. And now the whole thing is in pieces on the floor simply because he couldn't help himself, because this was going to be another big middle finger when this book came out to the PGA Tour. Look, I don't even think this is going to be a success, but at least I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, he's just it's so clear what his primary motivator is. And that's so disappointing. But as I said, maybe this has just always been him. And he's done an incredible job for 20 odd years. And we've had our experience with this too. We know athletes who are a different person in the public persona than they are behind closed doors. And it takes an incredible amount of energy to keep that up. And in many respects, I respect it. But maybe this is the case. Maybe we've never known the real Phil and we're just starting to get to know him.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one thing as well? You mentioned, you know who's looking the best out of this entire thing? And there's a couple of guys I talk about, Rory, JT, Spieth, who've never even entered the conversation. Rahm, they're looking great, right? Morikawa, great. Hovland, great. Alan Shipnuck's had a banner day. Great day for Alan, because not only has he been credited with probably landing a killer blow to this Rebel Golf Tour, his book sales are going to go through the fucking roof. Alan Shipnuck, great day. Do you know who I think's had the best day of all?
Is that
Andy Gardner of the Premier Golf League?
Yeah.
He's sitting back in his office in London, laughing his head off, absolutely pissing himself laughing, because all he's done for the last couple of months is open a flowing dialogue with the PGA Tour. How can we work with you? How can we collaborate? How do we find room in your schedule so we can bring in this new format, attract the best players, but in no way, shape or form step on your toes, cause any sort of discourse or disregard or unrest between yourself and your members? We want to work with you. And got sidelined for a little while because didn't have $130 million to be given players, didn't have the ability to drag people off a tour, but all of a sudden is looking absolutely swell. And I reckon Andy Gardner, of all the people in the world, has had the best weekend. A lot of people who haven't, Phil's had a shitty one. Greg Norman, Greg, tried to get WGCs off the ground, killed it. Tried to get the Saudi Golf League off the ground, killed it. I saw some great memes today about another great Sunday for Greg. Poor old Greg has had a shitty weekend. A lot of people have had bad weekends, but Andy Gardner of the PGL is laughing.
Greg Norman's like that guy who wants to get into horse racing and goes, I'm going to go down to the Magic Millions and I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy a $1.8 million Colt that's, out of some gun sire. And then it is off to the knackery after finishing back-to-back nights at fucking, I don't know, Terang on a Wednesday race.
To be fair, maybe I spoke too soon, because Greg's maybe had a good day, because Phil actually came in and has been clearly made to look like the worst guy involved with this. Because there was a while Greg was the clubhouse leader by a million miles, because he got into bed with the Saudis, spoke incredibly ignorantly about they've made progress.
Yeah,
it's great. And now all of a sudden, Phil has just taken that ball and run with it. And maybe Greg's already had not a bad day in the scheme of things, but
I think he still had a bad day. You want to talk about leverage? Andy Gardner now has leverage, right? So, and
I reckon you're going to have players in their droves saying that all the things that believe all of the things that Phil has said, maybe to a lesser extent, but believe that they deserve to earn a little bit more. And we have a viable option to do so through the PGL that isn't backed by blood money. So, Jay, find a way to make it happen.
And they've said previously that if the PGL didn't exist as the PGL, they would happily give the structure to the PGA Tour for the PGA Tour to run it. And I don't know how it doesn't work under the current format that the PGA Tour runs. It's a not-for-profit organization, which is fucking bizarre. But
501c6, I think it is.
Yeah. But so all the things that Phil has said, right? And this is what I keep coming back to. If you take the lens off that this wasn't backed by the Saudis, the fact that 48 players would split the media rights from a bargaining agreement, which you and I have both worked through bargaining agreements, that's significant for players. That's where the wealth comes from, right? The ability to choose your own schedule. We haven't even got to Scotty. He's the one that his whole thing was, hey, if I can play fucking 12 rounds,
whenever I want.
Yeah. But a lot of golfers would love to do that. And I don't blame them. Like, fuck, we've got Michael Clayton coming on the show later this week. And we talk at length as to how the PGA Tour has impacted the Australian Tour and how there's 48 events and it's too much. So all the things that the Saudis and the PGL have proposed are wonderful. One over here just comes from a very bad place. This one,
like incredibly bad, like no coming back bad. No, it's bad.
Yeah, this one, excellent. Like I just want it to be very clear that I am a staunch supporter of the PGL. Like I just want that to be said now because I think at times we sway on different levels of the spectrum depending on what information comes out around the PGL. Having listened to the interview that they did with the No Laying Up guys, and the fact that you and I have both worked in sports administration for the best part of the last 10 years, so we do have a pretty good understanding of this space. We're not just firing from the hip with some of these takes here, but not always, sometimes, but we've got generally a pretty good understanding of how this works. Like this has genuine merit for the PGA Tour and the PGL and the top 48 golfers and the viewer and for you and I to watch golf. Like I think that's a lost stakeholder in all of this. So that's probably, I don't have too much more to say. I just want to stake my stake in the ground, really, that the PGL, and it's a great point that you make that whatever his name is, Andy Gardner's had a wicked 48 hours.
So my only concern on that front is the natural reaction from the PGA Tour, having been under threat, will be to close ranks and double down and simply increase the purses. And having been burnt by this scenario, not even open the door to conversations, irrespective of whether your money comes from Saudi Arabia or otherwise. We are going to double down and close ranks. That's my only concern, because I think they have a window of opportunity here to both shun the Saudi threat and appear forward-thinking enough to partner with a body and a format and an idea that can make their game better. And I hope that they have the forethought to do that. Because I think, to be fair and to give them the credit where it's due, they've handled this Saudi situation very well. But it's now not the time to, go insular. I think it's about, it's about showing that you're willing to partner with people who have the best interests of the game at heart and not using it as a vehicle to sports wash, as has become the common term. So,
last question. I want to ask you one question very quickly, though.
Yes.
If you, I think it's different. If the answer to this question probably changes if you're in the top 48 players in the world or if you're not. Say the PGL's here and PGA Tours here. Our audio listeners have got no idea what I'm doing here.
Left hand, right hand.
Left hand, right hand. If the PGL is offering you a significant amount of money to come over and join, and you're one of the top 48 players in the world, what is your reason for wanting to stay on the PGA Tour? Is it as simple as history, ability to play in the majors? We don't know if that would ever be a thing. Like, what's the like? I look at like the EPL, right? Like the Premier League in 1992 was a significant. I think it was 92, 93, whenever that formally came to. Like, I feel like there's been significant movements in a lot of other sports that are almost this watershed moment, right? And I feel like golf is approaching it relatively quickly. And whether, we fought off this Saudi Golf League, the PGL's here with a great idea. The PGA Tour has always been here. Like, we're coming to a point where we've got to make a decision as to what we are as a sport. Like,
I think to be fair, you listen to the comments of, in particular, John Rahm. John Rahm was very strong on the Saudi piece. Ironically, he wasn't even asked the question. He just offered it as an opinion. And he was very strong around the legacy and the history of the tour, and that's why he plays. And the only reason to go with these guys would be the money, and it's not a good enough reason. I think maybe that was dialed up a little bit, because I don't think you can overstate the Saudi influence in terms, and when I say that, I mean from players kind of putting it at arm's length. I don't want in any way, shape or form to be associated with that shit and what's going on over there.
Yeah.
So I will use any number of excuses. I'll lean heavy in on the legacy and the history. And, John Rahm can quote guys like, I grew up watching Seve and what Seve did on the tour, and all of that plays well. That's, it's great little sound bites, and golf community eats that shit up. But I like, let's be honest, it's about, I don't want to be associated with Saudi Arabia. Now, if that money's on offer somewhere else, then we can consider it. But I think the point is that the PGL has been watered down so much from where it started to want to be a collaborative kind of like 10-week, let's fit it in somewhere in the PGA Tour, that it's an easy option. Like, the PGA Tour should be able to eat that and go, okay, no worries, we'll make it work. It's not trying to take players away. It's not trying to force them to make a choice between going to Riviera or Muirfield or Bay Hill for the Arnold Palmer or go and play in the PGA. It's not trying to do that. What it wants to do now is find a window, probably around the, Puerto Rico Open or the Los Punta Cana or wherever they play these tournaments that respectfully mean fuck all. Let's put it in that window and let's work with you to make sure the best players are there. That's such a doable option now. And it will give you it'll keep your players happy because it'll give them the ability to earn. For some of them, it'll give them the ability to buy in, ownership stakes on teams, choose their own people, earn 10x again on what they would from playing. But yeah, I think that, as I said, my only concern is that they bunker down rather than open themselves up to the opportunity of partnering with the right person simply because they've been burnt by this scenario. Whereas I think now is the exact time. Like, Jay Monahan should be getting on the phone right now to Andy Gardner and saying the best possible thing we can do is come out as a united front and make an announcement that will knock these guys off their feet. Because now's the time. If you wait 3 months and do it, and you give the opportunity for the Saudis to go away, rethink their plan, come at it from a different angle, that you do it now in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, while it's fresh. And these guys, I said before, the count hasn't started, but they're on their knees because you've hit them in the kidneys. Maybe they get up and you knock them out. Maybe this is the way to do it, by putting it to bed once and for all, right? And then you let Jason Kokrak go and play with his mates up from the Asian tour. And that's all that is. And that's all it'll ever be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a couple other things that we've got to get to before we wrap this up. It's gone way more than an hour, but
this is why we don't talk about Saudi. We get worked up and we get carried away.
We do. I just get the feeling that we're not going to hear anything out of the PGL now. It'd be real easy. Like, we've spoken about this many times when we were working together, and you see a negative announcement come out of someone else and you're like, fuck, it'd be really good to sink the boot in here. Don't do it. Like, if they just stay quiet, like, I think they're going to do it behind closed doors. They're absolutely going to be talking to the PGA Tour right now. Like, no doubt about it. But I don't know that they're going to be that publicly forward facing. Maybe they will.
I grew up, I shouldn't say I grew up a massive fan. I remain a massive fan, but probably in my early kind of teens, got right into Muhammad Ali. Was a big Muhammad Ali man, still am. And there's a moment in his famous fight, the Rumble in the Jungle against George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire, back in 1974. There's a moment when he knocks Foreman out. So he's done the rope-a-dope for 8 rounds, and he finally comes out swinging and he knocks Foreman out. And there's a famous picture. If you watch the footage, it's more obvious, but the picture kind of paints the moment. But he hits Foreman, and Foreman is falling, and he's got his arm cocked. And it's spoken about as the greatest punch never thrown, because he would have spoilt the moment. He's landed the perfect knockout blow, and Foreman is falling, and he would have thrown a clumsy punch that maybe wouldn't even grazed him, and it would have spoilt the moment. And that's exactly where the PGL find themselves now. They haven't had to lift a fucking finger. The Saudi Golf League has taken care of itself by mismanagement, engaging clumsy people, having leaks out their ass in terms of information going left, front. So the PGL hasn't had to lift a finger. Coming out now is throwing that punch. Don't do it. Just let them fall and concentrate on building yourself up. And it will be the best thing that they do, because the silliest thing now would be trying to dance on the grave of the SGL.
Yeah.
It won't show any grace, and it won't paint you in a good light. The best thing they can do now is not throw the punch.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I reckon the PGL is going to just stay quiet for a little bit, and the PGA. So that
was a really long way of explaining what they should do, but it's a good story.
It's a great story. All right. What do we want to wrap up with? You played out at Brookwater.
I did.
Tell us about that.
So I was going to go off in a variety of different directions here, but we've gone way over time. So just briefly, congratulations to Ben Arn, who won on the Corn Ferry Tour this week. Didn't even know Ben Arn was playing on the Corn Ferry Tour. He's our boy, and I say he's our boy because he's been up in the comments just the once on the 19th tee, but he's definitely our boy. So congratulations to Ben Arn. And young Jeffrey Guan, who is the leader on the Adidas Junior Sixes, of course, the brainchild of Ewan Porter, who's been a previous guest on this podcast, and one of the most promising young golfers in all of the country, Jeffrey Guan. He currently leads. Now, we're recording Monday night, so this is probably by the time you listen to it, not sure what the result will be, but he currently leads the Uniqlo Junior Championship being played over in the United States in heading into the final round. So big shout out to Jeffrey Guan, and all the best for him in his final round. So finally, Brookwater last Friday. We spoke about it last week on the podcast. You had grave concerns for me heading out to Brookwater for the first time. Obviously out there for the Josh McIntosh Memorial Golf Day, and Josh's story is one that we've brought you a number of times in this podcast. We spoke to Louis Dobler about Josh's influence on his career. We've subsequently spoken to Josh's brother Brad about what an incredible young man he was before he tragically lost a battle to illness in late 2020 it was at the time. So this was the inaugural Josh McIntosh Memorial Golf Day, meant to be held late last year on his first anniversary, but postponed due to weather. And we finally got out to Brookwater last Friday. That was the golf course that Josh and Brad grew up on. That's where they first met Louis Dobler. And mate, it's funny because it comes off the back of all the stuff we've just spoken about. And I think it's easy when we sit here and we talk every week and we watch the game at the very highest level. It's easy to become cynical at times with golf. And then you go and you have a day like last Friday, and to use an incredibly flogged to death term, I think, to go and have a day where not only was everyone there for the right reasons in terms of honouring and remembering a really special guy and Josh, but engaging in something that he loved and that we all love in the most purest of ways. And it was the very reason, you can only have days like that. It's the very reason why you remember why you love the game. So just really quirky thing. Not only is it a beautiful course, like first and foremost, wonderful course. And, I know played with Brad, which I was fortunate to do. And I know he considers himself lucky to have grown up cutting his teeth at Brookwater with Josh and obviously with Louis at a younger age. But just the way that they did the day, like wonderfully put together by primarily Brad and Josh's mum, Naomi, or Gnomes, as she's affectionately called. But some very cool concepts. There was a hole where you could only play your 7-iron the entire hole. There was a hole where they'd set up, they had different sporting equipment on the green, and you had to choose one. There was a cricket bat, there was shortened drivers, there was a croquet mallet. You had to choose one of them to putt with. There was a hole where you had your group, because it was 4-ball Ambrose. You had your group, and you had one person could only play one club. So the person whose drive you took, if they were to hit again on that hole, they had to play their driver. So it was just some really cool, fun stuff, made you think, and I think brought everyone back to the reason why you were there. And that was just to enjoy yourself, not take it too seriously, and at the end of the day, raise a bit of money for Team Telomere and the research and awareness effort that they're doing around the condition that Josh suffered. So, mate, it was really special. An incredible turnout. Everyone wearing orange, which was his favourite colour. And then to kind of get through the round and sit in the clubhouse there at Brookwater and, have people share some stories about Josh. And there was a lovely presentation, some photos. It was a lovely day. And I consider myself very fortunate to have spent the day with Brad, which I spoke to him afterwards and acknowledged that it would not have been an easy day for him in many respects. But the way in which he approached it, and we had such a good time there for, his good mate, Pat, who I'll give a shout out to. Pat, he was excellent fun, good mate of Brad's, knew Josh very well, very entertaining guy was Pat, and he was a pleasure to play around a golf with, and was fortunate enough to bring along my mate Josh, who's an avid listener of this podcast. And the four of us, I think, we're going to win you a 4-ball Ambrose. But just a really, really enjoyable day. And as I said, a valuable reminder of why we love the game. And it was, I think having never met Josh, which I think increasingly you and I feel to be a great regret of ours, given the stories that we've heard, I think we would have got along very well. But I don't know that there could have been a more appropriate Memorial Golf Day for a guy like that. And not only the people that were there, the energy that everyone brought, the spirit in which it was played, the format, just everything about it just seemed to be the perfect nod to a guy who was clearly very special human. So it was very cool, mate. Very, very cool.
Sounded like a great day. Looked like a great day from your work through the socials. 9 lost balls. That's not bad. Yeah. Pretty good.
I was pretty happy. One every 2 holes. I was thrilled. I was actually going quite well. I think I was talking to you. I thought through five holes, I'd only lost 1. And then holes like 6 through 9 were bad news. I think by the end of that, I'd lost 7 and then only lost 2 on the back 9.
Yeah.
So, 6 through 9 was bad.
Yeah, things moved very quickly for you because I was watching the update and it was ball count 5, 6, 7, 8. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, Cam.
Yeah. It's ironic too, because I hung a lot on you about bringing great shame to this podcast a week ago with your performance against Dave Gapes from 4-4. Fair to say that your answer to Brad's question about what should I expect, and you said very little, was probably fair.
I said you'd hit some good ones, and I'm sure you did.
Yeah, I played probably the best bunker shot I've played in 4 or 5 years. Right. To get us out with a par in a position we had no right to be parring a hole.
Interesting that you're playing a bunker shot in 4-ball Ambrose.
Trust me, the options were not great. Not great at all. The boys had some really good shots and some really bad ones. Yeah. So couldn't buy a putt all day, which is probably what cost us. But look, 3 under, we weren't last. We're probably midfield, but I think 8 or 9 under won the day, and it was that's what you needed, 4-ball Ambrose, not 3. So,
absolutely, no, very good,
mate.
Well done.
Look forward to having you there next year. Now that Chairman Mao Gowan has seen fit to bring down the wall.
Oh, has he though?
We'll see. Hopefully, I'm booked on a flight on at some stage in March. So.
That's what he said last time, though, Kate.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. So, look, hopefully by December of this year, we'll cross the fingers and get you across for the second annual Josh McIntosh Memorial Golf Day.
I must laugh. The first question that the reporter asked when McGowan made the announcement the other day. So why should anyone believe this date? And his answer was, well, this is the date. And
that's what he said last time.
I laughed. I had to laugh. I was like, because I put myself in his PR team's shoes, sitting there prepping him for that answer. I would have had no answer. I would have just, I don't know, mate, do whatever you want. No, fucking just come up with some sort of answer. So
say what comes to you at the time, because there's no spinnable answer here.
No. Anyway, it's happening. Game on. What do we got? We got a week off on the Aussie PGA Tour this week. Don't know what's going on in the PGA Tour.
I think it's the Honda at
Honda's
PGA
on.
National.
Excellent. I look forward to that.
And that's one of my other favourites. So obviously, Rivers is one of our collective favourites, and then the Arnold Palmer at Bay Hill may well be my second favourite event of the year.
Great event
on the PGA Tour outside the majors. So we've got the Honda this week at PGA National, and then we head to Bay Hill for the Arnold Palmer the week after. So.
And then we edge closer to Masters month, and then we're all underway. Coming later this week, Mike Clayton. What a belter of a chat.
A true statesman of Australian golf, and he was we've been talking about getting him on. I won't say since the first episode, but early days. And finally, the stars aligned, and he did not disappoint. Did Clates? So,
and this will just be part one too, because there was so much.
Oh Jesus!
That we did not even touch on. So yeah, no, very exciting for listeners here in Perth. They will get a kick out of Clates coming over very shortly for some project work. So,
and what we did in great podcasting a technique is we left that for the last 10 minutes. So if you're a listener in Western Australia, specifically in Perth, you're going to have to hang around for the whole thing to get to the WA part, which we finish on.
No, and there's some great stories along the way as well. So definitely tune into that.
Including how he didn't rate Adam Scott. So that was good.
Yeah, that was a very good one.
First time he saw him, he's all right. Maybe that good. Oh well, that's good.
Turned out pretty well. So no, great chat. Great to have your company, KM. Love chatting.
We'll be back later in the week with Mike Clayton. Stay tuned.